Don't forget to stay tuned until the end of this video because I'm going to share with you one of my favorite ways to make sure that I am getting the best deal possible on my larger purchases or even some of my smaller ones. Money management is something I am naturally good at. I have been good at it from a young age. When I was home living with my parents, working a full-time job and had no expenses but my car payment and car insurance, I was setting half of my paycheck aside into a savings account just because it felt good to me to save that money. And that allowed me to have some freedom to make some different life choices when I got a little bit older because I had a large savings from a young age. And then in my early years of marriage, we were on a shoestring budget to put it generously, and I figured whole new ways to go about budgeting. It was a very irregular income, and now we are almost 8 years married and we have 2 children, and of course it's a whole different season in our finances. And again, we're on a budget. We live in Southern California. It's very expensive here, and I am a stay-at-home mom, and we have to make sure that we know what we're spending our money on, and there's some things that we choose not to spend money on because honestly we just can't afford to do everything. So I have even managed the finances of a few loved ones in the past, and I have basically taken everything over, done a complete overhaul of their finances, and set up a plan for them that they have been able to successfully follow to keep everything in order. So again, something I enjoy doing, but I've kind of hesitated to make a video about it because I have so many thoughts about it. I just want to make sure I organize them in a very smooth and easy to understand fashion for you guys. It's a topic that can get confusing so quickly, so I want to make sure I'm doing it justice, doing you, a favor, and not further complicating the situation by giving you thoughts that aren't in order. In order to do that, I've decided to break budgeting down into a few smaller videos and blog posts instead of trying to address it all at once. So this one is going to be the basics for making a budget, and it's not going to be something where I tell you a percentage of your money should go to this or a dollar amount should go to that. No, this is going to be based off of you, your priorities, your spending, and your expenses. So let's dive on in. So first, let's talk about why you should make a budget. It is a little bit time consuming. It's something you need to keep up on. So you might be wondering why you should bother. Well, making a budget keeps you from being a little bit short every week. If you're a little bit short every week, that's not that big of a deal within that week, but that adds up to being a bit short every month. And if you look at a year, you end up in debt that way. You either end up actually owing money in debt, or you end up with less money towards things you should have money set aside for. So if you're the kind of person that never balances your checking account because there's so much money floating around in there that you really don't need to, that's great. You can still use a budget because you can use it to set that money aside for an investment or something that's going to set you up for your future, possibly your retirement or your children's future. If you are the kind of person that is paycheck to paycheck, always, paying bills a little bit late or trying to figure out what you should be paying first, this video will do you a lot of good. Setting up a budget has really changed my finances. It also really aids if you're trying to make large financial decisions. So if you are wondering if you can afford to buy a car or how much of a car payment you can afford, you will know already. This is not going to be a guessing game for you. Once you have a budget, your finances, it takes all of the mystical, magical question marks out of your finances. It's no longer, maybe we can afford that. I'm not quite sure. We'll try to figure out a way to swing it. No. You know exactly what you can and cannot afford. And in knowing that, it gives you the power to make really good financial decisions. And it also gives you the ability to save towards future purchases. And instead of impulse buying, if you've been saving for a little while, chances are during that time you've had plenty of opportunity to research prices. So it really benefits in multiple ways. You end up spending less money on the same things. So the first step is you need to figure out where your money's going. Now, most of us tend to use some sort of plastic to pay for our purchases, a debit card, a credit card. Generally, we charge things. There's a paper trail for most of the purchases that we make. So look back over at least 2 months if possible. Honestly, I'd recommend 6 if you have the time, but you can get started and tweak things later. So don't let this step overwhelm you. you want to go back through all of the purchases you've been making and see where your money's going. And the best way to do that is to put it into categories. So a category might be eating out, and be to find out how much you are spending on average on your utility bills, your rent bill, your insurance bills, every single thing that you are having to put money out. You want to know how much that's costing you on a weekly or monthly basis, depending on the billing cycle for that item. So if it's something like dining out, you'll want to look at that weekly. And if it's something that's a monthly bill, put it in monthly for now, and we'll break that down later. But make sure that even if it's an expense that you look at and think, I shouldn't have bought that, I'm not going to include it. No, go ahead and include it. Include it under like a mad money category so that everything's accounted for. Because as much as you want to tell yourself you're going to buckle down and not spend extra money on any of those things, you do need to leave yourself a little bit of wiggle room, because otherwise you're going to just go off budget and blow the bank. So make sure you're recording those, and then we can cut those back later if need be. Now, if you have an item that really doesn't need its very own category, such as shoes, you can put that into the generalized category. So if you find that you've purchased shoes and a handbag and a coat and a scarf and a hat all within the small amount of time you're looking at, you might actually need an apparel category. Or if it's just shoes and that's the only purchase, then maybe there's a general necessities or miscellaneous category that you have a few other items you can put into. But make sure that you're accounting for them in one way or another. But you're not going to want to set up a category just for shoes if that's not a regular expense. Oftentimes people wonder if they should be budgeting based on a monthly amount or a weekly amount. I highly recommend a weekly amount. The reason is that if you are budgeting on a monthly basis, if you spend a little bit too much at the beginning of that month and then you have nothing left in your budget for the remainder of the month, you're going to end up overspending. So any of your expenses that are currently monthly expenses, you'll want to divide them by 4 and figure out how much that amount is and apply it towards a weekly amount. If you end up with a 5-week month, you just get a little bit of extra padding that week. So just go ahead and divide it by 4. Don't worry too much about the difference in the weeks of a few months a year. If you have an annual expense, divide it by the 52 weeks in the year, and that's your weekly amount that you'll need to set aside for that item. You'll also need to do this with your income. So any income you have, if you just have a regular paycheck, if you have a little bit of side money that you earn, if you have a rental property, yay you, make sure that you are accounting for approximately how much per week, on average, you earn from all of your different income avenues. And then what you'll need to do is you will need to add up all of your income for each week, as well as add up all of your expenses for each week. So that'll give you 2 totals. You'll have your income total and your expenses total. Then it's time to balance your budget. So you need to look at both of those numbers, and if your income is equal to or greater than your expenses, you're doing well. Most likely, if you're watching this video, it's going to be the other way around. Your expenses may or may not be a little bit higher than your current income. And that's when we need to go back through the categories and see where we can trim the fat. So maybe when you look back through, you see you've been spending a lot of money on dining out, but maybe dining out is something you really enjoy doing. Maybe that's your family time, or maybe that's date night with your significant other. That's fine. I'm not saying cut it out completely. What I'm saying is maybe you can either choose to do it a little less often, or you can choose a less expensive place to eat. Perhaps when you look at all of this, you realize, wow, we are spending a fortune on TV service. I can relate to that because that happened to us. We've actually eliminated TV service in our house because even when we find that we have a little more wiggle room financially and possibly could afford it, there's other things we'd rather spend that money on than TV service. So get a little bit creative in your thinking. Just because something's a standard to have, that doesn't mean you have to have it. And start trying to figure out where you can cut back to make sure that your income is equal to or greater than your expenses. And when I say equal to or greater than, that's kind of, a starting step, but ultimately we do want your income to be greater than your outgoing expenses every month. And another thing to keep in mind is if in your expenses you have some sort of debt, credit card debt, anything that you're paying an amount of interest on that has a minimum payment, it's best if you can try to do anything possible to pay more than just that minimum payment. So if your minimum payment on your credit card is $200 a month, it will take you a very long time and you will pay a ton of interest paying that $200 off a month. if you can just eke out $5 extra a week, just $20 extra a month, if you're, on a tight budget, that will make a difference. It really will, and it will save you money long term. So keep that in mind when you're setting up your expense categories. And if you're looking at everything and thinking, wow, I really don't think we can cut back anywhere, I will have a post coming up. I'm not sure when yet, but I'm going to do a post about suggestions for where or how to save money or cut back on some items to try to get your budget balanced every week. So I do have an example for you guys. This is an example of a personal budget. And this shows the income, and the income in this fictional budget comes out to $1965. All the expenses are broken down here, and you can see some of them are monthly, and it's been divided by 4 to break it down into weekly. And the weekly expenses are $1733. So when we take our total expenses and our total income, you end up with a weekly surplus of $232. So that is, in my opinion, a relatively healthy budget for somebody that is on a tight budget. If you'd like to look at the example that does give you some suggestions for different categories, real life categories that some of your expenses might fall into, you can find it on my blog, thecheekyhomemaker.com, and just kind of get a starting point from there. Now, when I say weekly surplus, that's not extra money that we want to be spending. I have a series. Basically, I'm going to turn this video into a series because, as I mentioned at the beginning, the topic of finances is just so vast that I cannot cover it all in one video. It would be overwhelming and lengthy and probably a little bit convoluted. So yeah, we'll be getting there, but if you do find you have a surplus in your weekly amount, let that surplus ride over, because there's always unexpected expenses or things you may not have remembered to take into account that are annual expenses, or things that pop up like your car registration. There's all sorts of things that can play in. So if you find you have a weekly surplus, don't take that as good reason to start going out to eat more often or to the movies more often. Instead, let it ride, let it roll over. And chances are it will not be that much of a surplus, but if it is, we'll talk later about what you can do with that money that's the best use of it in the most productive way. Now, as promised at the beginning of the video, I have a little tip that, since we're talking about planning things and planning where we're going to spend our money, this is a way that I make sure that I'm getting the best deal possible when I make purchases on Amazon specifically. So on Amazon, a lot of times you'll go on and it'll have a cross out and it'll say a sale price, but you wonder, well, is it always on sale? Is this actually a really good deal? And you might hop around to some other websites to see what the price is there, and that's great to price shop. I definitely do that, and I believe in that. But if you would like to price shop Amazon against itself, there is a dedicated website where you can put in any item and it will tell you the history of the pricing on that item. It's fantastic. So for example, when I was getting a quite expensive baby stroller, I was able to go on and see what price range I should be looking at if it ever dropped down in price. And in reality, it really didn't go that discounted. So I knew that when I got that very rare Bye Bye Baby coupon that was 20% off with no exclusions, that was a great purchase for me. On the other hand, when I finally decided to get my older daughter a Kindle Fire tablet for kids, I was able to look not only at how low that price gets, but also figure out what time of year it tended to go on sale. And I was looking to purchase it before a road trip we were going on, and I was able to see that it was often on sale just before that time of year. So it happened, it went on sale, it worked out perfectly, and we got it at the sale price. So that website is camel.com. So it's camel, just like the animal, CAMEL, 3 times, .com. And it works fantastically. I think you'll be just as impressed as I am with it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and give me a big thumbs up. Hit the like button for me. If you're new here, we should be friends, so don't forget to check out my blog at thecheekyhomemaker.com. And you can also find me on Pinterest, Facebook, and Instagram at The Cheeky Homemaker. I hope to see you soon. Bye.